The sensor screen blinked with a strange signal, and Jothik stopped moving. His tentacles froze over the control panel as numbers scrolled across the display. Something was wrong. No, not wrong exactly. Something was different. Very different. He had been working on the Velcora scout ship for 8 years now. His job was simple and usually boring. He watched screens, looking for planets that might support life. Most days, he found nothing but rocks and ice and gas. Sometimes he found bacteria. Once, he found a moon with simple plants. But today was not like other days. "Commander Sylvain," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "You need to see this." Commander Sylvain walked across the bridge. Her hard outer shell clicked against the metal floor with each step. She had been a scout commander for 20 years and had visited more star systems than most beings could count. She had seen many strange things in space, but she had never heard that tone in Jothik's voice before. "What did you find?" she asked. "A planet, 3rd position from a yellow star. It's..." "Commander, I don't understand the readings." Sylvain looked at the screen. Her breathing holes fluttered rapidly, which happened when she was confused or surprised. She was both. The planet was blue and white and green. Water covered most of it. Clouds swirled in patterns above the surface. That alone was unusual but not impossible. But the atmospheric data made no sense at all. "Run the analysis again," she ordered. "There must be an error." Jothik ran the scan 3 more times. The results stayed the same. The planet's atmosphere contained 21% oxygen. Free oxygen. Just floating in the air. It also had nitrogen, carbon dioxide, and even traces of methane. These gases should not exist together. They should react and destroy each other over time. "It's impossible," Jothik whispered. But that wasn't all. The scans showed something else. Radio waves. Electromagnetic signals broadcasting into space in organized patterns. Someone down there was using technology. Someone was sending messages. Sylvain made a decision quickly. She had to report this immediately. Within 1 hour, she had transmitted all their data back to Throne Prime, the capital world of the Galactic Assembly. Within 3 hours, she received a response. They were ordered to stay in position and continue observing. More ships were coming. By the end of the first day, 5 more vessels had arrived. By the end of the first week, there were 40 ships from a dozen different civilizations, all watching this one small blue planet. Scientists, historians, military observers, and government officials all came to see the impossible world. They called it Sol 3 inches, their official reports. But the beings living on the surface called it something else. They called it Earth, and they called themselves humans. Dr. Keshtar arrived on the 2nd day. She was one of the galaxy's leading experts on xenobiology, the study of alien life. She had spent her entire career examining how life developed on different worlds. She had studied life forms that lived in acid oceans, creatures that breathed methane, organisms that survived in frozen wastes, where the temperature never rose above -200 degrees. She thought she had seen everything. She was wrong. "Show me everything," she told her new research team aboard the science vessel, called Luminous Inquiry. "I want complete biological scans. I want to know what lives down there." What she discovered made her question everything she thought she knew about biology and evolution. The planet was covered in life, not simple life like bacteria or algae, complex life. Plants grew on the land masses, animals lived in the oceans, on the ground, and in the air. There were millions of species, maybe tens of millions. The sheer diversity was staggering, but it was how they lived that shocked her most. "They eat each other," said Plix, one of her junior researchers. His eye stalks trembled as he examined the data. "The animals hunt and kill other animals for food." Keshtar studied the scans more carefully. Plix was right. The entire planetary ecosystem was based on something called a food chain. Plants converted sunlight into energy. Animals ate the plants. Other animals ate those animals. It was violent and chaotic, and somehow it maintained balance. On every civilized world in the galaxy, species had evolved past such primitive feeding methods billions of years ago. Most species absorbed nutrients directly from their environment through peaceful symbiotic relationships. The idea of one creature killing another creature just to survive was something from the ancient past, from the dark times before intelligence and civilization. But on Earth, it was happening right now. And the dominant species, the humans, were part of this violent system. Keshtar pulled up the evolutionary history of humans. The computer had analyzed their DNA and fossil records by accessing their public databases. What she read made her breathing holes close in shock. Humans had evolved from hunters. Their ancestors had chased prey animals across vast grasslands until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. Even now, millions of years later, human bodies still carried the marks of this heritage. They had long legs for running. They had shoulder joints designed for throwing weapons with accuracy. They could sweat through their skin to cool down, which allowed them to run for hours without stopping. Their eyes faced forward, giving them excellent depth perception for tracking prey. These are predators, Keshtar said quietly. The dominant intelligent species on this planet evolved from apex predators. This had never happened before. Every intelligent species in the Galactic Assembly had evolved from prey animals, or peaceful herbivores, or symbiotic organisms. The instinct to avoid conflict, to find peaceful solutions, was built into their basic biology. But humans were different. Humans had hunting instincts. They had evolved to chase, to track, to kill. Are they dangerous? Asked Plix. I don't know, Keshtar admitted. She pulled up more data. Humans had spread across their entire planet. They lived in frozen polar regions where the temperature regularly dropped below freezing. They lived in scorching deserts where water was scarce. They lived in dense jungles and high mountains and isolated islands. They had adapted to almost every environment their planet offered. More than that, they had changed their environment. They had built cities of metal and stone. They had dammed rivers, cleared forests, and reshaped landscapes. They had domesticated other species, both plants and animals, bending them to human purposes through selective breeding. They're terraformers, said one of the research assistants. They've terraformed their own planet to suit their needs. Keshtar kept reading. The humans had been tribal and scattered just 10,000 years ago. That was barely a blink of an eye, in evolutionary terms. But in that tiny span of time, they had developed agriculture, writing, mathematics, art, music, and philosophy. They had gone from stone tools to metalworking to electricity to computers to nuclear power. Their technological advancement was happening at a speed that shouldn't be possible. What drives them? Plix asked. Why are they advancing so fast? Keshtar thought she might know the answer. She pulled up Earth's geological and climate history. The planet had gone through multiple ice ages, periods of intense volcanism, asteroid impacts, and dramatic climate changes. Life on Earth had faced extinction events multiple times. Species had been wiped out again and again, but life kept coming back. It adapted. It evolved. It survived. And humans were the latest result of this brutal process. They hadn't evolved on a peaceful garden world like most civilized species. They had evolved on a planet that was actively trying to kill them. Their entire evolutionary history was a story of survival against impossible odds. Their planet made them strong, Keshtar said. Every challenge made them adapt. Every disaster forced them to become smarter, more resilient, more creative. They're not just survivors. They're the product of 4 billion years of surviving. The research team fell silent as they absorbed this information. Meanwhile, other ships continued to arrive. The small fleet around Earth grew larger every day. Military analysts studied human conflict. Historians examined human culture. Linguists decoded human languages. Anthropologists watched human behavior through long-range sensors. Everyone agreed on one thing. Humanity was unique. Nothing like them had ever been encountered before. The Galactic Assembly called an emergency session. Representatives from 3,000 civilizations gathered on Throne Prime to discuss the discovery. The humans had no idea this was happening. They continued their daily lives, unaware that hundreds of ships watched them from the darkness beyond their moon. Ambassador Thren of the peaceful Concordat stood before the assembly. His crystalline body refracted the chamber's light into rainbow patterns as he spoke. "We face an unprecedented situation," he said. "We have discovered an intelligent species that defies all our models of how civilizations develop. The question now is, what do we do about it?" The chamber erupted in discussion. Some representatives wanted immediate contact. Others demanded quarantine. A few suggested studying humans for years or even centuries before making any decisions. "They have nuclear weapons," warned Warmind Krelthos of the Armored Dominion. His mechanical voice echoed through the hall. "They have already used such weapons on their own kind. They killed hundreds of thousands in seconds. What happens if we contact them, and they turn that violence toward us?" "They also have art and music," countered Counselor Mira Eth, the Assembly's oldest member. "They write poetry and build museums. They created a global communications network and used it to share knowledge freely. They are more than just their capacity for violence." "But that capacity exists," Krelthos insisted. "We cannot ignore it." Ambassador Thren raised one crystalline hand for silence. "We will not make this decision hastily. I propose we establish a monitoring committee. We will study the humans carefully. We will learn everything we can about them before we decide whether to make contact." The assembly voted. The proposal passed easily. A committee was formed with representatives from 20 different species. Their mission was simple, but enormous. Learn everything about humanity. Understand what they were and what they might become. And most importantly, decide whether humans were ready to learn they were not alone in the universe. Back on Earth, in a small observatory in California, Dr. Sarah Chen stared at her computer screen. She had been searching for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence for 15 years. Every night, she analyzed radio signals from space, hoping to find something that wasn't random noise. Tonight, her equipment had detected something unusual. Multiple signals, all coming from just beyond Neptune's orbit. They were faint but definitely artificial. Someone was out there, and they were using technology. Her hands shook as she reached for her phone. She needed to report this. But as she picked it up, the signals suddenly stopped. All of them at once. As if someone had flipped a switch. Sarah sat back in her chair, staring at the dark screen. Had she imagined it? No. The computer had recorded everything. The signals had been real. Something was out there. Something was watching. She just didn't know what or why. In orbit far above, Commander Sylvine received new orders. All ships were to maintain position, but activate full stealth systems. The humans had detected their presence. That couldn't happen again. They needed more time to study before any contact was made. The fleet went dark. The watching continued. And on that small blue planet, 7 billion humans continued their lives, unaware that their world had just become the most important planet in the galaxy. Dr. Keshtar couldn't sleep. In her species, sleep was necessary only once every 10 days, but stress could make the need come earlier. She had been studying the data from Earth for 3 weeks straight, and nothing made sense. Her body demanded rest, but her mind refused to stop analyzing what she had learned. The problem was simple. Earth shouldn't exist. Not like this. She called a meeting of her entire research team. 20 scientists, from 8 different species, gathered in the conference room of the Luminous Inquiry. Holographic displays filled the air, showing images and data from the planet below. "Let me summarize what we know," Keshtar began. "Then perhaps one of you can explain to me how any of this is possible." She activated the first display. It showed Earth's atmosphere in detail, with each gas represented by a different color. "The atmosphere is 21% oxygen," she said. "This is free oxygen, not bound in compounds. It's just floating in the air. Every student of planetary science knows this should be impossible. Oxygen is reactive. It should combine with other elements and disappear from the atmosphere over time. But something is producing it, said Vex, a scientist from the methane-breathing Gendal species. He wore a protective suit filled with his native atmosphere. The plants. We've observed them. They take in carbon dioxide and release oxygen through photosynthesis. Yes, Keshtar agreed. But here's what makes no sense. Photosynthesis exists on many worlds, but on every other planet we've studied, the oxygen produced is immediately used by the same organisms or their symbiotic partners. It never accumulates in the atmosphere at such high levels. The fact that Earth has maintained this balance for hundreds of millions of years it's unprecedented. She changed the display. Now it showed various Earth animals, from tiny insects to massive whales. These creatures breathe the oxygen, she continued. They use it to burn food for energy. This is called aerobic respiration. It's incredibly efficient. Which is why these animals can grow so large and move so quickly. But it also means they must constantly consume other organisms to fuel their bodies. A young researcher named Trill raised one of her forearms. We've been studying their food chains. The violence is disturbing. Have you seen the videos of what they call lions? They hunt in groups, corner their prey, and tear it apart while it's still alive. Yes, Keshtar said quietly. I've seen them. I've also seen videos of what humans call sharks, crocodiles, and eagles. Earth is full of predators, but here's what you need to understand. This violence isn't random cruelty. It's a carefully balanced system that has existed for hundreds of millions of years. She pulled up a complex diagram showing the relationships between different species on Earth. Lines connected predators to prey, prey to plants, plants to soil organisms, decomposers, back to plants. It looked like a tangled web, but patterns emerged when studied carefully. Remove one species from this system, and others grow out of control, Keshtar explained. Remove the predators, and the herbivores multiply until they eat all the plants. Remove the plants, and everything collapses. It's violent, yes, but it's also stable. More stable than many peaceful ecosystems we've observed. Anman. But the humans, Plix said. Tell us about the humans. Keshtar nodded. This was the part that had kept her awake. She pulled up a rotating three-dimensional model of a human body. Humans are the result of this violent system, she said. Every part of their biology reflects their evolutionary history as hunters and survivors. She zoomed in on the human skeleton. Look at their bone structure. Their bones are dense and strong, reinforced with calcium. When a bone breaks, their body can repair it. The bone actually grows back stronger at the break point. No other species we've encountered has this level of automatic self-repair. The crics can regenerate limbs, Vex pointed out. Yes, but the crics evolved in a peaceful aquatic environment. They developed regeneration to recover from accidental injury. Humans evolved regeneration because they were constantly getting injured in their violent world. Their entire body is designed to survive damage. She changed the display to show the human muscular system. Their muscles contain two types of fibers. Fast-twitch fibers for quick, powerful movements. Slow-twitch fibers for sustained activity over long periods. This combination allows them to both sprint at high speed and run for hours without stopping. Their ancestors used this ability to chase prey animals until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. That's horrifying, Trill said. That's survival, Keshtar corrected. Early humans didn't have claws or fangs or venom. They weren't the strongest or fastest animals on their planet, but they could outlast almost anything. They could track an antelope for 20 kilometers, running the entire time, until the antelope's body overheated and it collapsed. Then the humans would kill it and eat it. She pulled up data on human thermoregulation. Humans cool themselves through sweating. They have millions of sweat glands, covering their skin. When they exercise, liquid seeps through their skin and evaporates, carrying away heat. This is incredibly efficient, but also wasteful. They lose precious water with every drop of sweat. Yet they evolved this system because the advantage it provided was worth the cost. The research team studied the data in silence. Keshtar could see the discomfort on many faces. This was so far from how their own species had evolved. "Let me show you something else," Keshtar said. She pulled up a comparison chart showing oxygen efficiency across different species. Human muscles are not particularly efficient at using oxygen compared to other Earth species. A horse can run faster. A wolf has better endurance. A cheetah can accelerate more quickly. But humans have something else. She zoomed in on the human brain. They have this. The human brain consumes 20% of their body's energy, despite being only 2% of their body mass. It's an enormous investment of resources. But it gave them intelligence, problem-solving ability, and social cooperation that no other Earth species could match. When humans couldn't run fast enough, they made spears and threw them, Keshtar explained. When they couldn't kill large prey alone, they worked in groups and developed complex hunting strategies. When they couldn't survive the cold, they discovered fire and made clothing from animal skins. Every limitation they faced, they overcame through intelligence and tool use. Vex examined the human genome data. They have something in their DNA called a persistence gene. It's related to neurochemical rewards for completing difficult tasks. Basically, their brain gives them pleasure when they overcome challenges. Yes, Keshtar said. Humans are biologically driven to pursue difficult goals. When they accomplish something hard, their brain releases chemicals that make them feel good. This encourages them to keep trying, to keep pushing, to never give up. She pulled up historical climate data from Earth. And they needed this trait because Earth never stopped challenging them. Look at this timeline. Ice ages occur on Earth roughly every 100,000 years. During these ice ages, glaciers cover huge portions of the continents. Temperatures drop dramatically. Many species go extinct. But humans survived, Trill said. Not just survived, they spread during the ice ages. They walked across land bridges that appeared when the oceans froze. They adapted to frozen environments that should have killed them. They learned to hunt woolly mammoths, which were 3 times their size and covered in thick fur and fat. And they did all this without any natural protection against the cold. The research team watched videos of modern humans in various environments. Humans in the Arctic, wearing thick clothing. Humans in the Sahara Desert, managing scarce water supplies. Humans climbing mountains where the air was thin and the temperature was far below freezing. They can adapt to almost anything, Keshtar said. We've observed humans living in environmental extremes that would kill most species. They build shelters, create tools, modify their clothing, adjust their diet. Their technology allows them to survive anywhere. But their bodies are so fragile, Trill objected. We've seen the medical data. They get sick easily. They're vulnerable to hundreds of diseases. Their immune systems are constantly fighting off infections. Yes, Keshtar agreed. Because their planet is full of microscopic predators too. Bacteria, viruses, parasites, fungi. Earth's biosphere is trying to kill them on every level, from the macro to the micro. So, they evolved an adaptive immune system. She displayed data on human immunity. When a new pathogen enters a human body, their immune system studies it, learns how to fight it, and remembers it for years, or even decades. They create custom antibodies for each specific threat. It's like having a biological computer that can program itself to fight any enemy. We have immune systems too, Vex said. Yes, but yours is mostly pre-programmed. You have defenses against the specific threats in your native environment. Humans have that too, but they also have this adaptive layer. They can develop immunity to brand new diseases they've never encountered before. It's why they've been able to spread across their entire planet. Every new environment has different diseases, and humans just adapt to them. Keshtar pulled up videos of human children playing. The team watched as young humans ran, jumped, climbed trees, and engaged in mock combat with each other. Notice how they play, Keshtar said. They're practicing for survival. The chasing games develop their running skills. The climbing develops strength and coordination. The wrestling teaches them about physical combat. Even their play is preparation for their violent world. But they're so emotional about their offspring, Plix observed. We've intercepted thousands of broadcasts about parenting. Humans spend years raising each child, protecting them, teaching them. They form intense emotional bonds with their young, because they have to, Keshtar explained. Human children are born helpless, completely dependent. A newborn human can't walk, can't feed itself, can't survive alone even for a day. They require years of constant care. So humans evolved powerful parental instincts. The emotions you're observing, the love and protectiveness, evolved because any human ancestor who didn't feel that way probably lost their children. She paused, letting the data sink in. Do you see what I'm describing? Humans are a product of their planet. Every trait they have exists because it helped their ancestors survive. The violence, the intelligence, the emotions, the determination, the adaptability. Earth made them this way. Are they still evolving? Asked Trill. Yes. But now it's different. They're not waiting for biological evolution anymore. They're evolving culturally and technologically. Watch. Keshtar pulled up a timeline of human technological development. The team watched as primitive stone tools gave way to bronze, then iron, then steel. Agriculture appeared and spread. Writing systems developed. Mathematics emerged. The scientific method was discovered. 10,000 years ago, humans lived in small tribes and hunted with spears, Keshtar said. 5,000 years ago, they built cities and created writing. 2,000 years ago, they had philosophy, engineering, and basic medicine. 1,000 years ago, they had universities and global trade routes. 200 years ago, they started the Industrial Revolution. 100 years ago, they invented flight. 50 years ago, they landed on their own moon. Today, they have computers, satellites, and space stations. That's impossibly fast, Vex said. Yes, most species take millions of years to progress from stone tools to spaceflight. Humans did it in 10,000 years. Their evolution has shifted from biological to technological, and it's accelerating. Keshtar pulled up the final piece of data. It showed human population growth over time. 2,000 years ago, there were roughly 300 million humans. Today, there are almost 8 billion. They've multiplied by a factor of 25. They've spread to every continent except Antarctica, and they've even established permanent research stations there. They're taking over their planet, Trill said. Yes, Keshtar agreed. But notice what else they're doing. She showed images of national parks, wildlife preserves, and conservation efforts. They're also trying to protect their planet. They've created laws to preserve wilderness areas. They're working to save endangered species. They've started to understand that their own survival depends on maintaining their biosphere's health. Are they learning to be peaceful? Plix asked hopefully. Keshtar considered the question carefully. I don't know. They're still fighting wars. They still have weapons. But they're also building international organizations, creating treaties, establishing global communication networks. They're beginning to see themselves as one species, rather than separate tribes. Whether that trend continues, we can't predict. The meeting ended with more questions than answers. The research team dispersed to continue their studies. Keshtar remained alone in the conference room, staring at the image of Earth floating in the holographic display. She thought about her own species, the gentle herbivores who had evolved on a garden world where food was abundant and predators didn't exist. Her ancestors had developed intelligence slowly, peacefully, over tens of millions of years. They had never faced the challenges humans faced, and yet, humans had gone from stone tools to spaceflight in a tiny fraction of that time. What would humans become if given another 1,000 years? Another 10,000? What would they achieve with that relentless drive to overcome challenges? That biological reward system that made them love difficult goals? Keshtar didn't know. But for the first time in her career, she felt something she had never felt when studying alien life before. She felt afraid. Not of what humans were now, but of what they might become. And she suspected she wasn't the only one in the galaxy who felt that way. Lead analyst Vortine had studied the rise and fall of civilizations for 40 years. He had reviewed the historical records of 10,000 different species across the galaxy. He had seen empires bloom and collapse. He had studied peaceful societies and aggressive ones, religious cultures and scientific ones, unified worlds and fractured ones. Nothing had prepared him for humanity's history. The Galactic Assembly had given him a task that seemed simple at first. Access Earth's historical records and determine whether humans were ready for first contact. Evaluate their cultural development, their moral progress, their capacity for peaceful coexistence with other species. Humans, it turned out, had made this task very easy. They had put their entire history on something called the Internet. Books, documents, videos, photographs, scholarly articles, personal accounts. Everything was there, available to anyone who wanted to look. Vortine had been looking for 3 months now. He wished he could stop. He called a meeting of the Historical Analysis Committee. 12 members from different civilizations gathered in the virtual conference space. Their holographic forms flickered as the connection established itself. "I need to show you what I've found," Vortine said without preamble. "But I warn you, this will be disturbing." He activated the first display. It showed a simple number that grew steadily larger as it counted forward through human history. The number was 15,438. "This is the number of recorded wars in human history," Vortine explained. "Conflicts where organized groups of humans killed other groups of humans. The number is approximate because many ancient wars were never written down. The true number is probably much higher." The committee members shifted uncomfortably. War wasn't unknown in the galaxy. Most species had fought among themselves in their primitive past. But 15,000 conflicts seemed excessive. "Let me be clear about what I mean by war," Vortine continued. "I'm not talking about small raids or brief skirmishes. I'm talking about sustained conflicts involving thousands or millions of combatants. Battles that lasted for years or decades. Events that killed significant portions of human populations." He pulled up a map of Earth that slowly filled with red dots. Each dot represented a major battlefield. By the time the animation finished, the entire planet was covered in red. "There is nowhere on Earth that hasn't seen war," Vortine said. "Every continent, every region, every culture. Humans have fought each other throughout their entire recorded history." He zoomed in on Europe and played a timeline. "Watch this. These are just the European wars over the past 2,000 years. The map flickered with conflict after conflict. Empires expanded and contracted. Borders changed constantly. Cities were conquered and reconquered. Now watch the casualties." Numbers appeared next to each conflict. 100,000 dead, 500,000, 2 million, 20 million, and this is just one continent, Vortine said quietly. Councillor Miraeth, the oldest member of the committee, spoke for the first time. "Show us their worst conflicts. I need to understand the scale." Vortine nodded. He had been dreading this part. He pulled up files, labeled World War I and World War II. In the 20th century, humans fought 2 conflicts they called World Wars. These involved most of their major nations fighting simultaneously across multiple continents. I'll start with the first one. The display showed maps of Europe, Africa, and Asia covered in battle markers. Vortine provided the summary data. World War I lasted from 1914 to 1918 by their calendar. 4 years of continuous fighting. Approximately 20 million people died. 40 million were wounded. Entire generations of young men were killed. They fought in trenches, using poison gas, machine guns, and artillery. The wounded often suffered for days in flooded trenches, before dying or being rescued. He showed photographs from the war. The committee members looked at images of soldiers standing in mud-filled trenches, their faces blank with exhaustion, images of destroyed cities, images of gas attack victims, images of burial grounds, stretching to the horizon. And then, 20 years later, they did it again, Vortine said. World War II was even worse. The new map showed an even larger conflict spanning the entire globe. The numbers were staggering. This war lasted from 1939 to 1945. 6 years. Approximately 85 million people died. That's roughly 3% of Earth's total population at the time. The war was fought on land, sea, and in the air. Cities were bombed. Civilians were targeted. Entire populations were displaced. He paused before showing the next piece of information. And then humans did something that changed everything. They developed nuclear weapons. The display showed the mushroom clouds over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Vortine provided the details. Along the 14, nuclear weapons work by splitting atoms. The explosion releases massive amounts of energy in seconds. The temperature at the center of the blast reaches millions of degrees. Everything within a certain radius is instantly vaporized. Beyond that radius, the heat causes fires and severe burns. Beyond that, the shockwave destroys buildings and kills through flying debris. And then there's the radiation, which poisons survivors and causes death over weeks or months. Humans used these weapons twice at the end of World War II. They killed approximately 200,000 people in seconds. And here's what I need you to understand. That was just the beginning. He pulled up data on nuclear testing. After the war, humans developed more powerful nuclear weapons. They tested over 2,000 nuclear devices on their own planet. 2,000 explosions, releasing radioactive material into their environment. They poisoned their own atmosphere to develop better weapons. Ambassador Thren leaned forward. Did they use these weapons again? No, Vortine said. They came close several times. They built enough nuclear weapons to destroy their entire planet many times over. But they never used them in war again. The fear of total annihilation kept them from doing so. They called it mutually assured destruction. The idea that any nuclear war would kill everyone prevented anyone from starting one. So, they learned from their mistakes. Counselor Mira Eth said hopefully, perhaps, or perhaps they simply learned to fear the consequences. Let me show you more of their history. Vortine spent the next hour presenting a catalog of human atrocities. The Mongol conquests that killed 40 million people. The European colonization of the Americas that destroyed entire civilizations through disease and violence. The Atlantic slave trade that captured and transported 12 million Africans in brutal conditions. The Holocaust, where Nazi Germany systematically murdered 6 million Jews and millions of others they considered undesirable. They document everything, Vortine said. That's what disturbs me most. They record their atrocities in careful detail. They build museums to remember them. They teach their children about the terrible things their ancestors did. Is that not a good sign? Asked Ambassador Thren. They acknowledge their past, instead of hiding from it. I don't know, Vortine admitted. Are they learning from these memories, or just taking pride in their capacity for violence? Look at this. He showed human military museums filled with weapons and war memorabilia. He showed monuments to famous generals and conquerors. He showed how humans celebrated their military victories with holidays and parades. They honor their warriors, Vortin said. Soldiers are considered heroes in most human cultures. They're respected and admired. The capacity for violence is seen as virtuous when directed at their enemies. But what about their culture? Counselor Mira Eth asked. Surely they have produced more than just war. Vortin pulled up new files. Yes, this is what confuses me most. Alongside all this violence, humans have created remarkable cultural achievements. He showed artwork from ancient Egypt, Greece, China, and India. He showed Renaissance paintings and sculptures. He showed modern art installations and digital creations. They make beautiful things, he said. They compose music that evokes complex emotions. They write poetry and literature that explores the deepest questions of existence. They build monuments and cathedrals that take generations to complete. He played examples of human music. A Bach fugue, complex and mathematical. A Beethoven symphony, powerful and emotional. A jazz improvisation, spontaneous and creative. Traditional folk songs from dozens of cultures. This is what makes them so difficult to understand, Vortin said. The same species that commits genocide also creates the Sistine Chapel. The same hands that build nuclear weapons also play piano concertos. They contain multitudes. He pulled up human philosophical texts. Works by Plato, Confucius, Buddha, Kant, and thousands of others. They've spent millennia thinking about ethics and morality, Vortin said. They've developed complex philosophical systems about justice, virtue, duty, and the good life. They debate questions about the nature of reality, consciousness, and existence. And yet, they keep fighting wars. Ambassador Thren studied the data carefully. It seems they have ideals they aspire to but frequently fail to achieve. Is that not common among developing species? Yes, but the gap between their ideals and their actions is enormous. Look at this. Vortin showed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a document created by the United Nations after World War II. It proclaimed fundamental rights for all humans. Freedom from slavery, freedom from torture, equality before the law, freedom of expression. They wrote this beautiful document, declaring that all humans deserve dignity and rights, Vortin said. And then, in the decades that followed, they violated every principle it contains. Wars continued. Torture continued. Slavery still exists in some regions. They profess noble values but struggle to live up to them. He showed more recent history. The Rwandan genocide in 1994, where 800,000 people were killed in 100 days. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. The ongoing conflicts in Syria, Yemen, and other regions. The rise of terrorism and the global war against it. They're still fighting, Vortin said. As of right now, there are active armed conflicts in dozens of locations around their planet. The violence hasn't stopped. The committee sat in silence, processing the enormity of what they'd learned. Finally, Warmind Krelthos spoke. These are the most dangerous beings we've ever encountered, he said. They've developed nuclear weapons before achieving a unified planetary government. They have the capacity to destroy their own world, but lack the wisdom to prevent themselves from doing so. We should quarantine this system immediately. Wait, said Counselor Mira Eth. Let Vortin finish his report. Is there more? Yes, Vortin said. There's something else I need to show you. Something that gives me hope. He pulled up statistics on human violence over time. Graphs showed war deaths as a percentage of total population, declining steadily from ancient times to the present. Humans are becoming less violent, Vortin explained, not in absolute numbers, which have grown with their population, but proportionally, a smaller percentage of humans die in wars now than at any time in their history. In ancient times, up to 15% of humans died violently. Today, it's less than 1%. He showed more data. They're also developing international institutions to prevent war. The United Nations, international courts, peacekeeping forces, treaties, and agreements. These institutions are imperfect and often fail, but they exist. Humans are trying to create structures that promote peace. They're also developing empathy, Vortin continued. Watch how their moral circle has expanded over time. He showed a timeline of human rights movements. The abolition of slavery, women's suffrage, civil rights movements, LGBTQ rights, animal welfare movements, environmental protection. They're slowly recognizing that more and more beings deserve moral consideration, Vortin said. In ancient times, humans only cared about their immediate tribe. Everyone else was an enemy to be killed or enslaved. Over time, they expanded their definition of US to include larger tribes, nations, races, and eventually the entire human species. Now they're beginning to extend moral consideration to animals, and even to their planet itself. He pulled up videos of humanitarian efforts. Doctors Without Borders treating the sick in war zones. International aid organizations feeding the hungry. Peacekeepers separating combatants. Rescue workers saving lives during disasters. They help each other, Vortin said, even across national and cultural boundaries. When disasters strike, humans from other countries send aid. They donate money, food, medical supplies. They volunteer to help strangers they'll never meet. But is this enough? Asked Ambassador Thren. Are they progressing fast enough to be trusted with knowledge of the greater galaxy? I don't know, Vortin admitted. Their technology is advancing faster than their wisdom. They have global communication, but they spread misinformation and propaganda. They have the capacity to save their planet from environmental destruction, but they struggle to cooperate on doing so. He pulled up one final piece of data. It showed humanity's space program, the Apollo missions, the International Space Station, the Mars rovers, plans for permanent moon bases, and Mars colonies. They're trying to leave their planet, Vortin said. They're reaching for the stars. They've sent messages into space, hoping to contact alien life. They've been searching for signals from other civilizations for decades. They want to know if they're alone in the universe. And when they find out they're not alone? Warmind, Krelthos asked. What happens then? That's the question, Vortin said. Will they react with curiosity or fear? Will they seek cooperation or conflict? Will first contact with alien species be the event that finally unifies them? Or will it trigger their worst instincts? The committee debated for hours. Some argued for immediate quarantine. Others wanted to make contact. A few suggested waiting decades or centuries to see if humans continued their apparent moral progress. In the end, they made no decision. Instead, they forwarded their findings to the full Galactic Assembly with a recommendation. The humans were unique, dangerous, creative, violent, compassionate, brilliant, and terrifying all at once. The decision about what to do with them was too important for a committee alone. The entire galaxy would need to decide, and they would need to decide soon, because humans weren't waiting. Their space program was growing more ambitious every year. Their telescopes were getting better. Their radio arrays were expanding. Eventually, they would detect the fleet watching them from beyond their moon. When that happened, ready or not, first contact would occur. The only question was whether humanity would survive it. The Grand Assembly Chamber on Throne Prime had never been so full. Representatives from 3,000 civilizations filled the vast space. Some stood on the main floor. Others floated in sections designed for aquatic or gaseous species. Still, others appeared as holographic projections from distant worlds. All had come to debate the same question. What should be done about humanity? The debate had been scheduled for 1 week. It was now entering its 3rd week, and no consensus had been reached. The chamber was divided into 3 main factions, and the arguments grew more heated with each passing day. Ambassador Thren of the Peaceful Concordat stood at the central podium. His crystalline body refracted the chamber's light as he called for order. "We will now hear from Warmind Krelthos of the Armored Dominion," Thren announced. "He wishes to present the case for immediate quarantine." Krelthos stepped forward. Unlike most representatives, he wasn't a biological being. The Armored Dominion had uploaded their consciousness into mechanical bodies millions of years ago. Krelthos appeared as a sleek humanoid form made of dark metal, glowing with internal energy. "Thank you, Ambassador," Krelthos said. His voice was synthesized but carried emotional weight. "I will be brief, because the situation is clear. Humanity represents a threat to galactic stability, and must be contained." He activated a holographic display showing human weapons throughout history. Stone axes, bronze swords, crossbows, guns, missiles, nuclear bombs. "Look at their technological progression," Krelthos said. "Every advance in human technology has been quickly weaponized. They invented powered flight, and within 15 years used it to drop bombs on cities. They split the atom and immediately built weapons of mass destruction. They developed computers and now use them for cyber warfare." The display changed to show battle scenes from human history. Ancient armies clashing with swords, medieval knights in armor, 20th century warfare with tanks and bombers, modern drone strikes. "Violence is not just part of human nature," Krelthos continued. "It's central to their entire civilization. They've been fighting each other continuously for their entire recorded history. They've developed countless philosophies justifying war. They celebrate their warriors and build monuments to military victory." He pulled up data on human military spending. They currently spend almost 2 trillion credits per year on weapons and armies. That's money that could feed their hungry, heal their sick, or advance their science. Instead, they spend it on weapons to kill each other, the chamber murmured. The number was shocking even to species familiar with conflict. "Now imagine giving these beings access to our technology," Krelthos said. "Imagine humans with faster-than-light travel, with energy weapons, with planetary defense systems. They would spread their violence across the galaxy like a disease." He changed the display to show human science fiction, movies and books about alien invasions, interstellar wars, galactic empires built on conquest. "This is how they imagine first contact," Krelthos said, "with suspicion and violence. They've been preparing mentally for hostile aliens for over a century. When they discover we exist, their first instinct will be fear, and fear leads to aggression." He deactivated the display and faced the chamber directly. "I propose we establish an energy barrier around the Sol system. Nothing gets in or out. We monitor them from a distance. In 10,000 years, perhaps 20,000, we check on them again. If they've evolved beyond their violent nature, we reconsider. If not, we maintain the quarantine indefinitely." "You're proposing a prison," someone called from the audience. "I'm proposing survival," Krelthos responded. "Ours and theirs. Because if we make contact too soon, we may be forced to defend ourselves. And I don't want to see what happens when our weapons meet their tactical creativity." He returned to his seat. The chamber erupted in discussion. Ambassador Thren had to call for order 3 times before the noise subsided. "We will now hear from Speaker Nala of the Explorers Coalition," Thren announced. Speaker Nala approached the podium. She was a tall, slender being with iridescent skin that changed color with her emotions. Currently, it showed patterns of blue and gold, indicating careful optimism. "Warmind Krelthos paints a frightening picture," Nala began. "But he shows only one side of humanity. Yes, they've fought wars. Yes, they've developed weapons. But they've also created art, music, literature, and philosophy. They've sent probes to explore their solar system, not to conquer it, but to understand it." She activated her own display, showing human achievements. The Hubble Space Telescope's images of distant galaxies. The Mars rovers, exploring an alien world, The International Space Station where humans from different nations worked together in space. The same species that builds bombs also builds these, Nala said. They explore because they're curious. They ask questions because they want to understand. These are not the traits of a species doomed to violence. She pulled up data on human scientific progress. In just 500 years, they've gone from believing Earth was the center of the universe to understanding the Big Bang, quantum mechanics, and genetic engineering. They've made more scientific progress in 5 centuries than most species make in 50,000 years. They're brilliant problem solvers, Nala continued. When they face a challenge, they don't give up. They try different approaches until something works. This persistence, this refusal to accept failure, is exactly what makes them perfect candidates for first contact. She showed videos of humans helping each other during disasters. Firefighters rushing into burning buildings. Doctors treating patients during epidemics. Volunteers rescuing people from floods. They're also deeply compassionate, Nala said. They risk their lives to save strangers. They adopt orphaned children from other cultures. They create charities to help the poor and sick. These behaviors come from the same emotional core as their capacity for violence. They feel intensely and care deeply. She changed the display to show humanity's message plaques sent on the Voyager spacecraft. Images showing human diversity, mathematical formulas, and a message of greeting. They want to meet us, Nala said simply. They've been trying to contact alien life for decades. They've sent messages and listened for responses. They imagine first contact with hope, not just fear. Yes, some of their fiction shows hostile aliens, but just as much shows peaceful cooperation and cultural exchange. She faced the chamber directly. I propose immediate first contact. We introduce ourselves, offer friendship, and invite them to join the Galactic Assembly as observers. Let them learn from us. Let them see that cooperation is possible. Give them a goal to aspire to. And if they respond with violence, someone called out. Then we defend ourselves, Nala replied. But I don't believe they will. Humans are survivors. They're adaptable. When they encounter a new situation, they assess it and respond appropriately. If we approach peacefully, with open hands and genuine friendship, I believe they'll respond in kind. She returned to her seat. The chamber erupted again, this time with more positive energy. Many representatives seemed swayed by her arguments. Ambassador Thren called for order once more. We will now hear from historian Vortine, who has studied humanity extensively. He will present the observer's position. Vortine approached the podium slowly. He appeared tired, as if the weight of his research had exhausted him. His tentacles moved sluggishly as he activated his own presentation. I've spent 4 months studying every aspect of human civilization, he began. I've reviewed their wars and their artwork, their genocides and their hospitals, their weapons and their space telescopes. And I've come to a conclusion that satisfies neither the quarantine faction nor the contact faction. He pulled up a complex chart showing human development over time. Humans are changing rapidly, in ways we've never seen before. Look at this data. The chart showed violence declining, education increasing, life expectancy rising, child mortality falling, literacy spreading, and scientific output accelerating. By every measurable metric, humans are improving, Vortine said. They're becoming less violent, more educated, healthier, and more scientifically advanced. The rate of change is extraordinary. In just 200 years, they've transformed from isolated agricultural societies into a globally connected technological civilization. He zoomed in on the most recent decades. The pace is accelerating. They've made more progress in the last 50 years than in the previous 500. They're changing so fast that predictions become unreliable. So you support contact, someone called out. No, Vortine said. Not yet. Because their technology is advancing faster than their wisdom. They have nuclear weapons, but no world government. They have global communication but no consensus on truth. They have the ability to change their planet's climate, but can't agree on whether to stop it. He showed images of Earth's environmental problems: pollution, deforestation, species extinction, ocean acidification, plastic waste. They're damaging their own planet, Vortin said. Not out of malice, but out of short-term thinking. They prioritize immediate economic gains over long-term survival. This is the behavior of a species that hasn't fully matured. Then you support quarantine, another voice called. No, Vortin said again. Because quarantine assumes they can't change. And the data clearly shows they are changing. Quarantine also requires us to make a moral choice. Do we have the right to imprison an entire species because we fear what they might become? He deactivated his display and spoke directly to the chamber. I propose a third option. We continue to observe, but we prepare for contact. We study them for 5 more years. We watch how they handle their current challenges. We look for signs of increased cooperation, improved environmental stewardship, and reduced conflict. During this time, we create a first contact plan. We choose our representatives carefully. We prepare messages that will resonate with human culture. We anticipate their questions and prepare honest answers. We decide what technology we'll share and what we'll withhold. We think through every possible scenario. And then, in 5 years, we make contact. Not because we're certain they're ready, but because waiting longer serves no purpose. They're already detecting anomalies in their astronomical data. They're getting better at analyzing radio signals. They will discover us eventually. Better that we control when and how it happens. He paused, letting his words sink in. But here's what I need you to understand. Whatever we decide, we must accept that humanity will change us as much as we change them. They're unlike any species we've encountered. Their presence in the Galactic Assembly will challenge our assumptions about civilization, intelligence, and morality. We evolved on peaceful worlds. We developed wisdom slowly, over millions of years. We learned cooperation because our environments taught us it was necessary. But humans learned cooperation despite their environment. They chose peace when violence would have been easier. That choice, made against biological instinct and evolutionary pressure, represents a kind of moral achievement we've never had to attempt. They scare us because they're different. But perhaps we need different. Perhaps the galaxy has become too comfortable, too safe, too predictable. Perhaps we need the chaos and creativity that comes from a species that learned to thrive in chaos. Vortin returned to his seat. The chamber fell silent. Representatives looked at each other, processing what they'd heard. Ambassador Thren stood at the podium. We've now heard from all 3 major factions. The debate will continue, but I want to add my own observation. He activated a display showing humanity's Voyager spacecraft, now traveling through interstellar space, carrying its golden record of human culture. Humans sent this craft into space knowing they'd never see it again, Thren said. They included music, images, and greetings in dozens of languages. They sent it because they hoped someone would find it someday. Someone they'd never meet. They wanted to say, "We exist. We create beauty. And we hope you're out there." That's profound loneliness, Thren continued. But also, profound hope. They sent art into the void because they believed connection was possible. I think that belief matters. He looked around the chamber. We're debating whether they're ready for us. But perhaps the better question is whether we're ready for them. Are we ready to welcome a species that will challenge everything we think we know? Are we ready for the energy and chaos and creativity they'll bring? Are we ready to be changed? The debate continued for 3 more days. Arguments were made and countered. Proposals were offered and rejected. The chamber divided and reformed along new lines. Species that usually agreed found themselves on opposite sides. Alliances shifted. Finally, after 4 weeks of debate, Ambassador Thren called for a vote. The proposal was Historian Vorteen's compromise, 5 more years of observation, followed by first contact under carefully planned conditions. The vote wasn't unanimous. A significant minority wanted immediate quarantine. A smaller group wanted immediate contact. But the majority agreed that careful, planned contact after additional observation was the wisest course. The resolution passed. 5 years. That's how long humanity had left before everything changed. 5 years to solve their problems, reduce their conflicts, and prove they were ready for the galaxy. They had no idea they were being tested. No idea their entire future hung in the balance. And that, several representatives agreed, was probably for the best. The 5 years passed faster than anyone expected. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the control room of the Arecibo Telescope Replacement Facility, staring at her screen with trembling hands. She had been searching for signals from extraterrestrial intelligence for 20 years now. Every night, she analyzed radio waves from space, hoping to find something that wasn't random noise. Tonight, she had found something impossible. "Run it again," she told her assistant Marcus. "Triple-check everything." Marcus ran the analysis for the 3rd time. The results stayed the same. Multiple artificial signals, all coming from just beyond Neptune's orbit. They weren't even trying to hide anymore. "Sarah," Marcus said quietly, "there are hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They're all out there, just watching us." Sarah picked up her phone and called the director. Then she called the National Science Foundation. Then she called the White House Science Advisor. Within 3 hours, every major government on Earth knew the truth. Humanity was not alone, and whatever was out there had been watching them for years. The news broke simultaneously across every major news network. Someone leaked it, or maybe several people did. Alien spacecraft were positioned beyond their solar system, had been there for years, were watching Earth right now. The response was chaos. Stock markets crashed. Some people panicked and stockpiled supplies. Religious leaders gave emergency sermons, offering competing interpretations. Scientists appeared on every news channel trying to explain what was happening. Governments held emergency sessions, but underneath the panic and confusion, another emotion began to emerge. Not fear, but excitement, curiosity, hope. They weren't alone. After centuries of wondering, after decades of searching, humans finally had their answer. Someone else was out there. The question now was what to do about it. The United Nations called an emergency General Assembly session. Every nation sent representatives. For once, the usual political disagreements seemed trivial. This was bigger than borders or ideologies. This affected all of humanity. "We need to respond," said the Secretary General. "We need to send a message." "What message?" someone asked. "Welcome? Go away? Why have you been spying on us?" "All of those," said Dr. Chen, who had been invited to speak. "We need to acknowledge that we see them. We need to express openness to communication. But we also need to make clear that we're not helpless, that we can defend ourselves if necessary." A team of linguists, mathematicians, and diplomats worked through the night crafting a message. They used mathematical language that any technological species should understand. Prime numbers to show intelligence, pictures of Earth and humans to show who was speaking, and a simple statement translated into symbolic logic. "We see you. We are here. We come in peace. But we can defend ourselves. Please respond." The message was broadcast on multiple frequencies toward the fleet beyond Neptune. Then, humanity waited. The response came 6 hours later. Every screen on Earth, every phone, every computer, every television suddenly displayed the same image simultaneously. A geometric pattern that resolved into a star map showing Earth's position in the galaxy. Then a simple animation showing a single spacecraft approaching Earth slowly with no weapons visible. The meaning was clear. They were coming. Peacefully. One ship. The world held its breath. Aboard the approaching vessel, Ambassador Thren reviewed the first contact protocols one more time. He had volunteered for this mission, believing his species' peaceful nature made them ideal for this crucial moment. But now, actually approaching Earth, he felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Fear. Not fear of humans. Exactly. Fear of making a mistake. Fear of saying the wrong thing or moving the wrong way. Fear of starting an incident that could escalate. This moment would define human-alien relations for potentially thousands of years. The pressure was enormous. Approaching Earth orbit, his pilot announced. They're tracking us with hundreds of sensors. Military assets are on high alert worldwide. Expected, Thren said calmly. Continue on course. Make no sudden movements. Broadcast peaceful intent continuously. The ship entered orbit exactly where the humans expected, over the United Nations headquarters in New York. Thren had chosen this location deliberately. Not a military base. Not a single nation's capital. The place where humans came together to solve problems collectively. He sent a message requesting permission to address the UN General Assembly. The response came quickly. Permission granted. Thren prepared himself. He had studied human psychology extensively. He knew they responded better to individuals than abstractions. He knew they valued directness and honesty. He knew they were frightened but also curious. He materialized in the General Assembly Hall, using a teleportation technology that was carefully calibrated to be impressive but not threatening. He appeared at the front of the chamber, his crystalline body refracting the lights into rainbow patterns. The hall was packed, every seat filled, representatives from every nation, press from around the world. Scientists, religious leaders, military officers, all staring at him in absolute silence. Thren had prepared a speech. Formal greetings. Explanations of the Galactic Assembly. Carefully worded descriptions of what would happen next. But as he looked at the faces staring at him, filled with wonder and fear and desperate hope, he changed his mind. Hello, he said simply, in English. His translator made his voice sound warm and gentle. My name is Thren. I come from a place very far from here, and I bring you a message. You are not alone. You have never been alone. We've been out here, waiting for you to be ready to meet us. The hall stayed silent, but he could see tears forming in many eyes. Some people were crying openly. I know you have many questions, Thren continued. I will answer them honestly. But first, I need you to understand something important. We've been watching you for 5 years. We've studied your history, your cultures, your art, your science. He paused, letting that sink in. We've encountered thousands of intelligent species in our exploration of the galaxy. But we've never met anyone quite like you. Your planet tried to kill you. And you survived. You faced challenges that would have destroyed most species, and you thrived. You developed technology faster than should be possible. You created beauty in the midst of violence. You chose cooperation, despite being born into competition. You scare us, Thren admitted. Because you're different from us. We evolved on peaceful worlds. You evolved on a world that demanded strength. We learned wisdom slowly. You learned it quickly, in the midst of chaos. He looked around the chamber. But we've decided to trust you, to extend our hand in friendship, to invite you to join us in exploring the galaxy together, because we think the galaxy needs what you bring. Your persistence, your creativity, your refusal to accept that any problem is unsolvable. The Secretary General stood slowly. Why now? Why did you wait 5 years to contact us? Honestly, Thren said, we were debating whether you were ready. Whether we were ready. Some of our people wanted to quarantine your system, to keep you contained until you evolved beyond violence. Others wanted immediate contact. We compromised. We watched, we learned, and now we're here. What did you see in those 5 years? Someone called out. Progress, Thren said. Not perfection. You still fight wars. You still damage your planet. You still have poverty and suffering. But you're trying to fix these problems. Your conflicts are smaller than they used to be. Your environmental awareness is growing. Your international cooperation is increasing. You're young, but you're learning. A military officer stood. Are you a threat to us? No, Thren said firmly. We have weapons that could destroy your planet, but we have no interest in using them. We're explorers and scientists, not conquerors. We follow strict ethical guidelines about interfering with developing species. We wouldn't be here if we wanted to harm you. What happens now? Asked the Secretary General. That's up to you, Thren replied. I'm here to invite humanity to join the Galactic Assembly as provisional members. You would send observers to learn about our civilizations. We would send cultural ambassadors to Earth. We would share some technology, though not all of it. Not yet. You would maintain your independence and sovereignty. We're offering friendship and knowledge, not control. What do you want in return? Someone asked. The same thing you want, Thren said. To learn, to grow, to explore together. We have 3,000 member species, and each one has taught us something valuable. We believe humanity has much to teach us too. The chamber erupted in discussion. Delegates shouted questions. Some argued for accepting immediately. Others urged caution. The noise grew until the Secretary General called for order. We need time to discuss this, she said. To consult with our governments and our people. Of course, Thren said. Take all the time you need. I'll remain in orbit. Whenever you're ready to talk more, just send a message. He teleported back to his ship. The General Assembly immediately went into closed session. The debates would continue for weeks, but Thren knew the answer already. He had seen it in their eyes. The hunger for knowledge, the desire for connection, the excitement at finally having proof they weren't alone. Humans would say yes. The only question was, how quickly? The debates did continue for weeks. Every nation had opinions. Every religious organization issued statements. Scientists argued about the implications. Philosophers debated the meaning. Ordinary people around the world watched and waited. But underneath all the debate, a consensus was forming. Humanity wanted this. They wanted to explore. They wanted to learn. They wanted to meet the thousands of species waiting out there among the stars. 2 months after Thren's appearance, the United Nations held a vote. Should humanity accept the invitation to join the Galactic Assembly as provisional members? The vote was overwhelming. 173 nations voted yes. 5 voted no. 23 abstained. The Secretary General sent a message to Thren. We accept your invitation. When do we start? 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 Thren's response was immediate. Right now. Over the next 6 months, everything changed. A Galactic Assembly delegation arrived on Earth. Scientists from a dozen species, all eager to study this impossible planet where life thrived despite hostile conditions. They set up research stations in partnership with human scientists. Knowledge began flowing in both directions. Human ambassadors traveled to Throne Prime. 5 carefully chosen individuals, representing different cultures and perspectives. They walked through the Grand Assembly Chamber, their eyes wide with wonder at the thousands of species gathered there. When they spoke before the assembly, they were nervous but honest. They acknowledged humanity's violent past without shame or excuse. They presented it as lessons learned, as growth achieved, as proof that change was possible. We know what we've been, said Ambassador Williams, the delegation leader. We've fought each other for thousands of years. We've made terrible mistakes. We've hurt our planet and each other. But we've also loved and built and dreamed. We've created art and music and philosophy. We've reached for the stars because we believed something better was possible. You've watched us at our worst, Williams continued. And somehow, you still invited us here. We don't take that lightly. We don't expect you to trust us immediately. Trust is earned. But we promise you this, we will learn from you. We will grow. And we will prove that your faith in us was justified. The assembly gave them a standing ovation. Well, the species that had legs stood. The others expressed approval in their own ways. But the meaning was clear. Humanity was welcome. Back on Earth, galactic technology began arriving. Not weapons or ships. Those would come later, if ever. But medical technology that could cure diseases. Agricultural techniques that could end hunger. Energy systems that could replace fossil fuels. Water purification methods that could provide clean water to everyone. The aliens were careful to introduce technology gradually. Too much, too fast could destabilize human society. But even the limited sharing transformed lives. Children in poverty received medicine. Farmers in drought-stricken regions grew abundant crops. Cities powered by pollution were cleaned by fusion reactors. Humans responded with gratitude but also with questions. How does this work? Can we improve it? What else is possible? And the aliens discovered something remarkable. Humans didn't just accept new technology passively. They tore it apart to understand it. They found ways to improve it. They asked questions that hadn't occurred to species who had used these technologies for thousands of years. They're extraordinary, Dr. Keshtar reported to the assembly after 6 months of collaboration. Human scientists are adapting to alien concepts faster than any species on record. They're proposing modifications to our technology that actually work. They're thinking in ways we never considered. One. It's their problem-solving instinct, she explained. They evolved to face challenges, so they see every new technology as a puzzle to solve. They're not satisfied with just using it. They want to understand it, improve it, make it their own. Human engineers started working alongside alien engineers on starship designs. Human doctors collaborated with alien biologists on new medical treatments. Human artists created works that blended human and alien aesthetics in ways neither species could achieve alone. But the greatest impact was psychological. Humans were no longer alone. That knowledge changed everything. Wars didn't stop immediately. Political conflicts continued. But something shifted in human consciousness. The petty disputes between nations seemed smaller when viewed against the backdrop of a galaxy full of intelligent life. The idea that all humans were fundamentally the same became easier to accept when the alternative was thousands of truly alien species. We're all human became a rallying cry for unity movements worldwide, not to exclude aliens, but to recognize that despite their differences, all humans shared common ground that was precious and worth protecting. Environmental movements gained momentum. If humanity wanted to be respected among the stars, they needed to take care of their planet. Earth became a point of pride, a unique world worth preserving. 1 year after first contact, Ambassador Thren stood before the United Nations again. He had been invited to speak on the anniversary. "You've exceeded our expectations," he said simply. "In 1 year, you've integrated into the galactic community faster than species that had centuries. You've embraced learning. You've shared your own knowledge freely. You've proven that our decision to trust you was correct. I've been asked to inform you that the Galactic Assembly has voted to accelerate your provisional membership. In 5 years, instead of the usual 50, you'll be eligible for full membership, full access to all technologies, full participation in galactic governance, equal standing with species millions of years older than you." The chamber erupted in applause. Thren waited for silence before continuing. "But I need to be honest with you about what that means. The galaxy isn't perfect. We have disputes. We have species that don't get along. We have problems we haven't solved in thousands of years. We're inviting you, not into paradise, but into complicated reality. And that's why we need you, Thren said. Because you're good at solving complicated problems. You've spent your entire existence overcoming challenges. Your whole planet is a testament to the power of persistence and adaptation. The galaxy has become comfortable, stable. Some would say stagnant. We've had peace for so long we've forgotten how to change. But you haven't. You know how to adapt, how to innovate, how to keep trying when others would give up. You scare us, Thren admitted again. But that's good. Comfortable isn't always healthy. We need the chaos and creativity and energy you bring. We need your perspective. We need humans. He paused, his crystalline form catching the light. So, welcome. Welcome to the galaxy, humanity. We're excited to see what you'll do next. Because if your history has taught us anything, it's that humans never stop surprising us. The applause this time was deafening. That night, around the world, people looked up at the stars with new understanding. Those points of light weren't just burning gas millions of miles away. They were destinations, places to explore, homes to thousands of species who were now friends and colleagues. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in her observatory, the same place where she'd first detected the alien fleet. She thought about the journey that had brought them here, the fear and wonder of that first detection, the chaos of the announcement, the anxiety of waiting for first contact, the joy when Thren had appeared and said, "You are not alone." She pulled up her computer and started writing a paper about new collaborative research projects between human and alien scientists. There was so much to learn, so much to discover, so much to explore, and humanity had all the time in the galaxy to do it. On Throne Prime, in the Grand Assembly Chamber, Counselor Miraeth stood before the 3,000 gathered species. She was one of the few who remembered the debate about humanity from 6 years ago, who remembered the fear and uncertainty about whether to make contact. "I want to acknowledge that some of us were wrong about humans," she said. "Myself included. I worried they would bring violence and chaos. They've certainly brought chaos, but not the kind I feared. They've brought the chaos of new ideas, of questions we stopped asking millennia ago, of challenges to assumptions we'd accepted as truth. They've made us think harder and look at old problems with fresh eyes. In just 1 year, human scientists have contributed to 17 major research projects. Human engineers have improved 12 existing technologies. Human artists have created works that are being studied across the galaxy. And human philosophers have restarted debates we thought we'd settled long ago. They're making us better, Miraeth said. Not by being perfect themselves, but by refusing to accept that any of us are perfect. They keep pushing, keep questioning, keep trying to improve everything they touch. Warmind, Krelthos warned us that humans were dangerous. He was right. They're dangerous to complacency, to stagnation, to the comfortable assumption that we've figured everything out. She looked around the chamber. I'm glad we took the risk. I'm glad we said yes, because the galaxy needed humans. We just didn't know it until they arrived. The chamber filled with sounds of agreement from thousands of different species, each expressing approval in their own way. And somewhere in the Sol system, orbiting the third planet from a small yellow star, human children were learning about alien cultures in school. Human teenagers were dreaming about traveling to distant worlds. Human scientists were planning research missions to explore strange new environments. The impossible planet had produced an impossible species. And that impossible species was about to show the galaxy what humans did best. They persevered. They adapted. They dreamed. And they never, ever gave up on reaching for the stars. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly what it needed.
The deep space scanner on the bridge of Harmony's Edge began beeping with a steady rhythm that made Captain Vex's scales ripple with unease. The sound meant only one thing. They had found something that should not be there. Report, Vex commanded, his reptilian voice carrying the authority of 20 years in the Galactic Union Fleet. His yellow eyes focused on the main screen where dots of light showed the positions of stars and planets in this empty sector of space. "Unknown vessel detected, Captain," replied Officer Kane, a four-armed being from the Tetran system. His multiple hands moved quickly across the control panel. "It's drifting near the boundary of the restricted zone." Captain Vex felt his blood grow cold. The restricted zone meant only one thing. They were close to Earth, the legendary death world that had killed every exploration team ever sent to study it. No ship was supposed to be here. No ship could survive being here. "Distance?" Vex asked, moving closer to the scanner display. 12,000 units and closing," Kane responded. "It appears to be dead in space. No energy signatures, no communications, no movement." Dr. Kale, the ship's science officer, looked up from her research station. Her blue skin had turned pale with worry. "Captain, that's impossible. Nothing survives. In this sector. The radiation from the Death World's sun alone should have destroyed any ship years ago." Vex studied the readings on his screen. The unknown ship was small, much smaller than any proper galactic vessel. Its shape was strange too. Long and narrow with odd bumps and extensions that made no sense to his trained eye. "Bring us closer," he ordered. "But keep our shields at maximum power. If this is some kind of trap, I want to be ready." The Harmony's Edge moved through space like a silver needle, its advanced engines making no sound in the vacuum. As they drew nearer to the mystery ship, more details became clear on their screens. "By the Seven Suns," whispered Kane, his forearms stopping their work. "Look at that thing." The unknown vessel looked like it had been built by children playing with scrap metal. Its hull was made of different materials welded together in patterns that hurt to look at. Strange symbols covered its surface, symbols that looked primitive and crude compared to the elegant writing systems used by civilized species. "It's so ugly," Dr. Kale said, her scientific mind struggling to understand what she was seeing. "How does it even fly? Those engines are tiny. And what are those? Tubes sticking out everywhere?" Captain Vex had seen many strange things in his years of service, but this ship was different. It radiated an aura of wrongness that made his survival instincts scream warnings. Yet something else about it called to him. A mystery that demanded to be solved. "Run a full scan," he ordered. "I want to know everything about that ship. What it's made of, where it came from, and how long it's been drifting out here." The scanners worked for several minutes, sending invisible beams of energy to probe the mysterious vessel. When the results came back, they made no sense at all. "Captain," Kane said slowly, "according to our readings, that ship is old. Very old. The materials show signs of aging that suggest it's been in space for at least 50 cycles." 50 cycles, Dr. Kale gasped. "Nothing could survive that long in this radiation field. The ship should have been destroyed decades ago." Vex stared at the readings. 50 cycles meant the ship had been drifting near the Death World for longer than most species had known about faster-than-light travel. It was impossible. Yet there it was. "What about life signs?" he asked. Kane's hands moved over his controls, again. "That's the strange part, Captain. There are life signs, but they're weak. Very weak. Like something sleeping, or in deep stasis." "Stasis pods," Dr. Kale said with excitement. "They must have stasis pods. That would explain how they survived so long." Captain Vex made his decision. "Prepare a boarding party. We're going over there." "Sir," Kane protested, "regulations clearly state that any vessel found near a death world should be destroyed immediately. We're not supposed to make contact." "Those regulations assume the vessel is hostile," Vex replied. "This ship is clearly disabled. If there are survivors aboard, it's our duty to help them." An hour later, Captain Vex floated through the airlock connecting his ship to the mysterious vessel. He wore a full environmental suit, as did the 3 crew members with him. Kane, Dr. Kale, and Security Chief Brix, a massive bear-like creature whose strength was legendary throughout the fleet. The moment they entered the unknown ship, Vex knew they had made a terrible mistake. The corridors were wrong. Everything was wrong. The ceiling was too low, the walls too narrow, and the lighting cast strange shadows that seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. Worse, the artificial gravity was working perfectly, which should have been impossible in a ship this old. By the ancestors, Brix growled, his deep voice muffled by his helmet. This place feels like a tomb. They moved deeper into the ship, their footsteps echoing strangely in the narrow hallways. The walls were covered with more of those primitive symbols, along with images that made no sense. Pictures of creatures that looked like hairless apes standing upright, landscapes that seemed too green and blue to be real, and strange machines that served no obvious purpose. "Captain," Dr. Kale whispered, "look at this." She was standing in front of a wall panel covered with switches and dials. The technology was so primitive it looked like something from a museum, yet it was clearly functional. Small lights blinked, steadily, and a screen showed readouts in those strange symbols. "Can you read any of it?" Vex asked. "The universal translator is trying," she replied. "But these symbols don't match any known language. It's like they developed completely separately from galactic civilization." They continued through the ship, finding room after room of impossible things. Storage areas filled with containers holding substances that their scanners couldn't identify. Equipment that looked like weapons but worked on principles their science couldn't explain. And everywhere, those disturbing images of the hairless ape creatures. Finally, they reached what was clearly the ship's main cargo hold. And there, arranged, in neat rows, were dozens of stasis pods. "Sweet mother of stars," Kane breathed. The pods were active. Each one held a sleeping form, the same hairless, pale creatures they had seen in the images. They looked fragile and weak, with thin limbs and soft skin that seemed like it would tear if touched too roughly. "These must be the ship's passengers," Dr. Kale said, moving closer to examine one of the pods. "But I don't understand. What species are they? They're not in any of our databases." Captain Vex approached the nearest pod and looked down at the sleeping creature inside. It was smaller than him, with a round head covered in thin brown hair. Its face was smooth and unmarked by the scars or natural armor that most intelligent species developed. It looked impossibly young and innocent. "According to the pod's readings," Dr. Kale reported, "this one is still alive. They all are. The stasis systems are working perfectly, despite the ship's age." "But who are they?" Brix rumbled. "And how did they get so close to the death world?" That's when they found the ship's main computer core. It was located in a room that was clearly meant to be the bridge, though it looked nothing like the command centers of proper starships. The computer itself was a massive, primitive thing that filled half the room and hummed with electrical energy. Dr. Kale connected her portable translator to the computer's data ports. For long minutes, nothing happened. Then, slowly, words began to appear on her screen. "I'm getting something," she said excitedly. "The computer's language is similar to the symbols we've been seeing. The translator is starting to make sense of it." More words appeared, then sentences, then entire paragraphs of text. As Dr. Kale read, her blue skin grew paler and paler. "Captain," she whispered, "you need to see this." Vex looked at her screen and felt his scales go cold with fear. The words were simple and clear, translated into perfect galactic standard. "Ship's log. United Earth vessel, New Dawn. Day 18, 250 of our journey. Captain Reed reporting. We have traveled far from our dying home in search of a new world where humanity can survive. Our stasis pods are holding well, and we should reach the galactic shipping lanes within the next few cycles. We carry with us the last hope of our species. 847 souls fleeing the environmental collapse of Earth. We do not know what we will find among the stars, but we cannot be worse off than we were at home. Earth has become uninhabitable, and we are the last ship to escape before the final catastrophe. May whatever gods exist in this vast universe have mercy on us, for we are truly alone. The date stamp on the log entry showed it was over 50 cycles old. These creatures, these humans, claimed to be from Earth itself, from the death world that no living being had ever seen and survived. Captain Vex stared at the sleeping forms in their stasis pods, and realized that everything the galaxy thought it knew about the universe was about to change forever. Dr. Kale couldn't sleep. For 3 days she had been thinking about the sleeping humans in their strange ship. The other crew members of the Harmony's Edge were scared and wanted to leave the area immediately. But she was a scientist, and her curiosity was stronger than her fear. "We should study them," she told Captain Vex for the 10th time as they stood in his private office. "These creatures survived on the Death World. They might know things that could help the entire galaxy." "Captain." Vex looked tired. His yellow eyes were dim and his scales had lost their usual bright color. "Dr. Kale, you know the regulations. Anything from Earth is to be avoided at all costs. We should report this to headquarters and let them decide." "But Captain," Dr. Kale pressed, "think about what we could learn. How did they survive? What makes them different from every other species that died trying to explore that world?" Vex was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he sighed. "What do you want to do?" "Let me study one of their stasis pods," she said quickly. "Just one. I want to understand how their technology works. Maybe we can learn something about their biology too." Against his better judgment, Captain Vex agreed. The next morning, Dr. Kale returned to the human ship with a small team. She had chosen the pod containing the creature with brown hair, the one that had looked so peaceful in its sleep. The pod's control panel was covered with symbols, but her translator had been working on the language for days. She could now understand basic commands and readings. The life signs were strong and steady. The creature inside was healthy and ready to wake up. "Are you sure about this?" asked Kane, who had come with her. His 4 arms were shaking with nervousness. "It's just one," Dr. Kale said, though her own voice was not as confident as she wanted it to be. "We'll wake it up, ask a few questions, and then put it back to sleep if necessary." She pressed what she hoped was the awakening sequence. The pod hummed softly, and warm air began to flow through its systems. Slowly, the transparent cover lifted with a soft hiss. The creature's eyes opened. Dr. Kale had expected many things. She had expected the creature to panic, to scream, to attack, or to cower in fear. What she had not expected was for it to sit up calmly, look around at the alien faces surrounding it and say something in its strange language that sounded almost friendly. "Hello," the creature said, and somehow the translator made the word understandable. "I'm Tom." The simple introduction shocked Dr. Kale more than any scream would have. This creature, this human, was acting like waking up surrounded by alien beings was the most normal thing in the universe. Tom looked at each of them carefully. His eyes were brown like his hair, and they seemed curious rather than afraid. He was smaller than any of them, with soft skin that looked like it had never seen real sunlight. Yet there was something in his posture that made Dr. Kale think of a predator that was simply choosing not to attack. "You're not human," Tom said, and it wasn't a question. "Different species, I'm guessing. How long have we been asleep?" Dr. Kale found her voice. "You've been in stasis for over 50 cycles. We found your ship drifting near the restricted zone." Tom nodded as if this made perfect sense. 50 cycles. That's about right. We were hoping to reach the shipping lanes by now. He looked around. The cargo hold. "Are my people safe?" "They're still sleeping," Kane said nervously. "We only woke you up." "Smart," Tom said with what looked like a smile. "Probably better to test the waters with one person first. I'm guessing you know where we came from?" Dr. Kale nodded slowly. "Your ship's computer said you came from Earth." Something changed in Tom's expression. For just a moment his friendly demeanor slipped, and Dr. Kale saw something that made her scales crawl. It was like looking into the eyes of a creature that had seen too much death and learned to live with it. "Yeah," Tom said quietly. "We're from Earth. Last ship out before the end." "But that's impossible," Dr. Kale burst out. "Nothing can survive on Earth. It's a death world. Every expedition we've sent there has been destroyed." Tom looked genuinely confused. "Death world? Earth's not that bad." I mean, sure, we had some problems with climate change and pollution, but we managed for thousands of years before things got really bad. Kane's forearms were trembling. Not that bad? Your world is classified as the most dangerous planet in known space, really? Tom seemed interested rather than offended. What makes you think that? Dr. Kale pulled up her datapad and showed him the official reports. Every ship that has tried to land on Earth has been destroyed. The radiation levels, the toxic atmosphere, the extreme weather, the hostile life forms, nothing we've sent there has ever returned. Tom studied the reports, his brown eyes moving quickly across the text. Finally, he looked up with that strange smile again. "Oh, I see the problem," he said. "You've been trying to land in the wrong places at the wrong times. Earth's not toxic, well, not everywhere, and the life forms aren't hostile unless you threaten them or act like prey." "Act like prey?" Dr. Kale asked weakly. "Yeah, you know, running around, making noise, acting scared. That attracts predators. You have to move confidently. Show that you belong there." Tom stretched his arms, working out the stiffness from his long sleep. "Earth's got some tough neighborhoods, sure, but it's not impossible to survive there. We did it for millions of years." Dr. Kale felt like her understanding of the universe was crumbling. This small, soft creature was talking about the death world like it was just another planet with some minor inconveniences. "But the reports," she said desperately. "Ships destroyed by massive storms, crews killed by creatures that hunt in packs, entire expeditions wiped out by diseases. Sounds like they weren't prepared," Tom said simply. "Earth's weather can be rough, and yeah, there are some dangerous animals. But you learn to deal with it. You adapt." The word adapt sent a chill through Dr. Kale. In galactic terms, adaptation meant slow evolutionary changes over millions of years. But Tom made it sound like something his species did casually, like changing clothes. "How do you adapt to planet-killing storms?" Kane asked. "You build better shelters. You learn to read the weather signs. You find safe places to wait it out." Tom shrugged. "Sometimes you lose people, but the species survives." "Sometimes you lose people," Dr. Kale repeated numbly. This creature was talking about mass death like it was just part of life. "That's how it works," Tom said gently, as if explaining something obvious to a child. "The strong survive, the weak don't. The smart ones learn from the mistakes of the dead ones. Eventually, you get tough enough to handle whatever the world throws at you." At that moment, alarms began blaring throughout both ships. Captain Vex's voice came through their communication devices. "All crew return to stations immediately. We have multiple ships approaching fast." Tom's expression changed instantly. The friendly, peaceful human was gone, replaced by something that made Dr. Kale's survival instincts scream warnings. His brown eyes became cold and calculating, and his soft body seemed to coil like a spring ready to strike. "Military vessels?" he asked, his voice now carrying an edge that hadn't been there before. "How did you know?" Kane gasped. "The way you're all acting. The panic in your captain's voice. Someone's coming to deal with the problem of humans being alive." Tom stood up smoothly, and Dr. Kale noticed that despite his smaller size, he moved with a fluid grace that suggested deadly competence. "I should wake up my people." "Wait," Dr. Kale said. "Maybe we can talk to them. Explain that you're peaceful." Tom looked at her with something that might have been pity. "Dr. Kale, right? You seem like a good person. But you need to understand something about humans. We've been dealing with extinction events for our entire existence. Ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, plagues that killed 92% of our population. We've survived them all." He moved toward the other stasis pods, his hands working confidently on the control panels. "And you know what we learned from all that death and destruction?" Tom continued as the first pod began its awakening cycle. "We learned that when someone comes to kill you, you don't try to reason with them. You make sure they regret the attempt." More pods began opening, and Dr. Kale watched in growing horror as humans began to wake up. Each one sat up calmly, assessed the situation quickly, and immediately began moving with the same deadly purpose she had seen in Tom. A woman with short black hair looked at the aliens and asked, Status? Possible hostile contact incoming, Tom replied. Unknown number of ships, probably military. The woman nodded. Wake everyone, full alert. Already on it, Captain Reed. Dr. Kale realized she was looking at a species that had been forged in the fires of the deadliest world in the galaxy. And now, surrounded by potential enemies in the depths of space, they were showing their true nature. As more humans awakened and began preparing for whatever was coming, Dr. Kale understood with crystal clarity why every expedition to Earth had failed. It wasn't because the planet was too dangerous for life to survive. It was because it was the perfect place to create the most dangerous life in the universe. Captain Reed stood in the cargo hold of the New Dawn, watching as her people finished waking up from their long sleep. She was tall for a human, with short black hair and scars on her hands that spoke of a hard life. Her brown eyes moved constantly, taking in every detail of their situation. Report, she said to Tom, who had become her unofficial liaison with the aliens. We're in deep space, 53 years from Earth, Tom replied. These people found us drifting near what they call a restricted zone. They seem friendly, but there are military ships coming. Reed nodded and turned to Dr. Kale, who was still standing nervously near the stasis pods. You're the scientist who woke us up? Yes, Dr. Kale managed to say. I'm Dr. Kale of the Galactic Union research vessel Harmony's Edge. Galactic Union, Reed repeated thoughtfully. So there's a whole government out here, that's good to know. She paused. Tom says you think Earth is some kind of death trap. Dr. Kale's blue skin had gone pale. It's classified as a Class 3 death world, the most dangerous planet we know of. Nothing survives there. Captain Reed smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. Dr. Kale, would you like to see what Earth is really like? Before Dr. Kale could answer, Reed was leading her toward the ship's data storage room. The other humans followed, moving with a quiet efficiency that made Dr. Kale's nerves crawl. These creatures looked so fragile, yet they moved like a pack of predators. The data room was small and cramped, filled with primitive computers and storage devices. Reed activated a large screen and began pulling up files. This is Earth, she said as images appeared on the screen. Dr. Kale gasped. She was looking at a world of impossible beauty. Blue oceans that sparkled in sunlight, green continents covered with plant life, white clouds that looked soft and peaceful. It was nothing like the toxic wasteland described in the galactic records. It's beautiful, she whispered. It was, Reed agreed. But Earth doesn't stay beautiful for long. Watch this. The image changed to show massive storms with winds that could tear apart buildings, lightning strikes that could power entire cities, tornadoes that moved across the landscape like hungry monsters, destroying everything in their path. This is what we call Tuesday weather in Kansas, Reed said casually. Dr. Kale watched in horror as the storms raged across the continent. How do you survive that? Underground shelters, early warning systems. You learn to read the signs. Reed pulled up another file. This is winter in Siberia. The screen showed a landscape of pure white that stretched to the horizon. The temperature reading made Dr. Kale's blood freeze. It was cold enough to kill most known life forms in minutes. We lived there for thousands of years, Reed said. You adapt. Better clothing, better heating, better food storage. The weak die. The strong get stronger. More images flashed across the screen. Deserts where the heat could cook metal. Jungles where every plant and animal was trying to kill you. Oceans with storms that could sink ships the size of small cities. This is just the weather, Reed continued. Then there are the animals. Dr. Kale watched in growing terror as the screen showed creatures that looked like living nightmares. Massive predators with teeth like swords. Pack hunters that could run for days without stopping. Tiny creatures with poison that could kill in seconds. That's a grizzly bear, Reed said, pointing to a brown mountain of muscle and claws. They can weigh 800 pounds and run faster than most galactic vehicles. We used to hunt them for food. You hunted those things? Kane asked, his forearms shaking. Had to. They were hunting us. Reed pulled up more files. This is a great white shark. 20 feet long, 3,000 pounds of pure killing machine. Some humans swim with them for fun. Dr. Kale felt sick. For fun? Adrenaline rush, Tom explained. Humans like danger. It makes us feel alive. The images kept coming. Poisonous snakes that could kill with a single bite. Spiders the size of dinner plates. Insects that carried diseases that could wipe out entire populations. But those are just the normal animals, Reed said. Then there are the really dangerous ones. She showed them footage of something that looked like a nightmare-given form. A creature with multiple heads, each one filled with razor-sharp teeth. It moved through water like liquid death, hunting prey with intelligence that was clearly beyond simple animal instinct. Saltwater crocodile, Reed said matter-of-factly. Been around since the dinosaurs. Hasn't changed much because it's already perfect at what it does, killing things. Dinosaurs? Dr. Kale asked weakly. Reed grinned, and for the first time Dr. Kale saw genuine joy in her expression. Oh, you'll love this. The screen filled with images of creatures that defied belief. Reptiles the size of buildings, with teeth like spears, and claws that could tear through steel. Flying monsters with wingspans that could cover entire landing pads. Herbivores that were basically living tanks, covered in armor and spikes. These ruled Earth for over 160 million years, Reed explained. Then a rock the size of a mountain hit the planet and killed most of them. The ones that survived turned into birds. Dr. Kale looked at the small feathered creature on the screen. That's a bird? Descendant of the T-Rex, Reed said proudly. We keep them as pets now. The images shifted to show human cities. But these weren't the primitive settlements Dr. Kale had expected. They were massive constructions of metal and glass, reaching into the sky like fingers grasping for the stars. We built these while dealing with everything I just showed you, Reed said. Storms, predators, diseases, natural disasters, just part of daily life. You adapt or you die. But the expedition reports, Dr. Kale protested. Every ship that tried to land on Earth was destroyed. Reed's expression grew serious. What did these expeditions do when they landed? Standard first contact protocols, Dr. Kale replied. Land in open areas, establish communication, try to make contact with local life forms. And they came in. Ships? Of course. How else would they travel between stars? Reed exchanged a look with Tom. Dr. Kale, let me ask you something. If you saw a strange object fall from the sky and land on your world, what would you assume it was? A ship? Exactly. And if strange creatures came out of it? Creatures that looked nothing like anything you'd ever seen before? Dr. Kale felt understanding dawn on her like a cold sunrise. We would think it was an invasion. Earth has been invaded before. Reed said quietly. By our own species, by diseases, by predators. We learned a long time ago that when something unknown shows up, you kill it first and ask questions later. She pulled up more files. Images of human warfare. Dr. Kale watched in horror as humans fought each other with weapons that could level cities. Battles that lasted for years, with casualties in the millions. We've been fighting each other for our entire history, Reed explained. Competition for resources, territory, mates. It's what made us strong. When your expeditions landed, we probably thought they were just another invasion attempt, but they were trying to make peaceful contact, Dr. Kale said desperately. How are we supposed to know that? Tom asked. Strange creatures from the sky, using technology we'd never seen before, speaking languages we didn't understand. What would any rational species do? Dr. Kale realized with growing horror that humans hadn't destroyed the galactic expeditions out of malice. They had done it out of the same survival instinct that had kept them alive on the deadliest world in the universe. There's something else, Reed said, pulling up a final set of files. The real reason we left Earth. The images showed a world, dying. Oceans turning acid, forests burning, cities abandoned to rising seas. But even in the midst of ecological collapse, humans were still there. Still fighting, still surviving, still adapting. We poisoned our own world, Reed said simply. Burned through resources, polluted the air and water, changed the climate. Most species would have just died out. But humans don't give up. We built ships and left to find a new home. How many of you escaped? Dr. Kale asked. Not many. Maybe 50,000, spread across a dozen ships. We were the last one out. Reed's voice was steady, but Dr. Kale could hear the pain underneath. Everyone else stayed behind to keep the planet running long enough for us to get away. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then Kane spoke up, his voice barely a whisper. Your entire species sacrificed itself so a few could survive? That's what humans do, Reed said. We protect our own, no matter the cost. At that moment, Captain Vex's voice came through the communication system. All personnel, prepare for contact. The Galactic Union fleet has arrived. Reed straightened up and Dr. Kale saw the transformation again, from teacher to warrior in the space of a heartbeat. Dr. Kale, Reed said calmly, I think you're about to see what happens when humans feel threatened. Admiral Thane stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Iron Talon, watching the tactical display with cold satisfaction. His gray skin was marked with battle scars, and his red eyes burned with the intensity that had made him the most feared military commander in the Galactic Union. Status report, he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never lost a battle. 3 ships detected, sir, reported his tactical officer. 1 Union research vessel and 2 unknowns. The unknowns appear to be connected by docking tubes. The humans? Confirmed, sir. Heat signatures indicate approximately 800 life forms aboard the smaller vessel. Admiral Thane smiled, showing teeth designed for tearing flesh. His species, the Craxi, were natural warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds before joining the Union. If anyone could handle a few primitive creatures from a death world, it was him. Send the standard demand for surrender, he ordered. If they refuse, we destroy both ships. I will not allow these humans to contaminate the galaxy with their presence. On the bridge of the Harmony's edge, Captain Vex received the Admiral's message with growing dread. He had served under Thane before and knew the Admiral's reputation for solving problems with overwhelming force. Captain Reed, Vex said through the communication link, Admiral Thane is demanding your immediate surrender. He has 5 heavy cruisers and enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Captain Reed's voice came back calm and steady. What happens if we surrender? Vex hesitated. Probably imprisonment, maybe execution. The Admiral sees you as a threat to galactic security. And if we refuse? He'll destroy both our ships. There was a pause, then Reed spoke again, and something in her tone made Vex's scales crawl with unease. Captain Vex, I want you to know that you and your crew have been kind to us. We won't forget that. But you should also know that humans have a saying. We do not go gentle into that good night. What does that mean? Vex asked. It means we don't give up, even when we're dying. Meanwhile, aboard the New Dawn, the humans were working with terrifying efficiency. Dr. Kale watched in amazement as they transformed their primitive ship into something that looked like a floating fortress. Maya, the chief engineer, was directing teams of humans as they tore apart their own ship's interior. Wall panels became armor plates. Support beams became weapon mounts. Even the furniture was being converted into defensive positions. How are you doing this so fast? Dr. Kale asked Maya, who was welding a piece of machinery that had once been part of the ship's kitchen. Practice, Maya replied without looking up. Humans have been fortifying positions for thousands of years. You learn to work with whatever you have. But you're destroying your own ship. Maya finally looked up, and Dr. Kale saw the same cold determination she had seen in all the humans. Dr. Kale, this ship was our home for 50 years. But a home is just a place. What matters is protecting the people inside it. Across the cargo hold, a human named Ben was setting up what looked like a medical station. But Dr. Kale noticed he was also preparing surgical tools that could easily be used as weapons. Are you a doctor? She asked him. Field medic, Ben replied, checking his supplies. Been patching up humans since I was 16. Earth was a dangerous place, always someone getting hurt. And the surgical tools? Ben gave her a look that was both gentle and terrifying. Dr. Kale, on Earth, the line between healing and killing is sometimes very thin. A good medic knows both sides of that line. Captain Reed moved through the ship like a general preparing for war. She spoke to each human briefly, giving orders in their strange language. Dr. Kale noticed that none of them questioned her commands. They simply nodded and carried them out with deadly precision. "What's your plan?" Dr. Kale asked, when Reed passed near her. "Survive," Reed replied simply. "Whatever it takes." On the Union fleet, Admiral Thane was growing impatient. The humans had not responded to his surrender demand, and his tactical sensors were showing strange energy readings from their ship. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the unknown vessel is showing increased activity. Multiple power sources coming online." "Weapons?" "Unknown, sir. The energy signatures don't match any known weapon systems." Thane frowned. These primitives shouldn't have any technology that his sensors couldn't identify. "Move us closer. I want a full scan of that ship." As the Union fleet approached, Captain Reed was making final preparations. She stood in what had once been the ship's cafeteria, now converted into a command center. Around her, humans worked at control stations that had been jury-rigged from salvaged equipment. "Maya, status on the weapons?" Reed asked. "We've got 6 improvised railguns using the ship's magnetic containment coils," Maya reported. "Not much range, but they'll punch through most armor at close distance." "Ben, medical supplies?" 15 trauma kits ready. I've also prepared alternative medical supplies in case we need to treat prisoners." Dr. Kale didn't want to think about what alternative medical supplies meant when a human said it. "Tom, communications." "I've been monitoring their fleet communications," Tom said. "They're not expecting any real resistance. The Admiral thinks this will be easy." Reed smiled, and Dr. Kale felt a chill run down her spine. "Good. Overconfidence is always useful." Admiral Thane's fleet moved into attack formation around the 2 connected ships. From his bridge, the human vessel looked pathetically small and helpless. "Open a channel," he commanded. "I want to speak directly to whoever is in charge of that ship." Captain Reed's image appeared on the main screen. Thane studied her carefully, noting the scars on her hands and the cold intelligence in her brown eyes. This was not some primitive savage. This was a trained military commander. "I am Admiral Thane of the Galactic Union Fleet," he announced. "You will surrender immediately or be destroyed." "I am Captain Reed of the Earth vessel New Dawn," she replied calmly. "We are refugees seeking asylum. We have committed no crimes against your Union." "Your very existence is a crime," Thane snarled. "Nothing from the death world can be allowed to live. You are contamination that must be cleansed." Reed's expression didn't change. "Admiral, you're making a mistake. We don't want to fight you. We just want to find a new home and live in peace." "Peace?" Thane laughed. "Creatures from a death world don't know the meaning of peace. You are weapons disguised as refugees." "You're right about one thing," Reed said quietly. "We are weapons. We've been forged by the deadliest world in the galaxy. But we only become dangerous when someone tries to kill us. Threats will not save you," Thane replied. "You are outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender now, and I promise your death will be quick." Reed leaned forward slightly, and her smile became something that made even Admiral Thane feel a moment of unease. "Admiral," she said, "you've made 2 critical errors. First, you assumed that being outnumbered means we're beaten. Second, you assumed we're afraid to die." "What are you talking about?" "Humans have a concept called mutually assured destruction. It means that even if you can kill us, we'll make sure the cost is higher than you're willing to pay." Thane's tactical officer suddenly called out in alarm. "Sir, energy spike from the human vessel. They're powering up some kind of weapon system." On the screen, Reed's smile grew wider. "You want to see what humans are capable of, Admiral? You want to know why Earth is called a death world? You're about to find out." Alarms began blaring on every ship in the Union fleet as the humans revealed what they had built from the scraps of their dying ship. It wasn't just weapons. It was a demonstration of the ingenuity and determination that had kept their species alive on the deadliest world in the galaxy. "All ships open fire," Admiral Thane commanded. "Destroy them now." But as the Union fleet began its attack, Captain Reed gave her final order with the calm of someone who had faced extinction before and survived. "All stations, implement Murphy's law protocol," she said. "Show them what happens when humans get creative." Dr. Kale, watching from her position behind a makeshift barrier, realized she was about to witness something that no galactic military academy had ever prepared their officers for: a cornered human fighting for survival. And despite the impossible odds, she found herself believing that somehow, against all logic and reason, the humans might actually win. The first salvo from Admiral Thane's fleet lit up space like a deadly fireworks display. Energy beams that could melt asteroids lanced toward the tiny human ship. But instead of the expected explosion, something impossible happened. The beams scattered. "What?" Admiral Thane roared from his bridge. "Report!" "Sir, they're using some kind of magnetic field generator," his tactical officer stammered. "It's deflecting our energy weapons." Captain Reed smiled grimly as she watched the enemy fire splash harmlessly against their improvised defenses. "Maya, status on the shield array?" "Holding steady," Maya called back from her jury-rigged control station. "But we can't keep this up forever. We're burning through our power reserves fast." The magnetic shield was a desperate gamble, built from the ship's cargo handling systems and powered by their life support generators. It could deflect energy weapons, but it was draining their ship's power at a dangerous rate. "Tom, any luck with their communications?" Reed asked. "I'm in their network," Tom replied, his fingers dancing over a control panel that had once been a coffee machine. "Admiral Thane is ordering his ships to switch to projectile weapons." Reed nodded. She had expected this. "Maya, drop the magnetic shield and activate the chaff dispersal system." Across the human ship, compartments that had once held personal belongings burst open, releasing clouds of metallic debris into space. The chaff created a swirling storm of reflective particles that confused targeting systems and absorbed energy blasts. Admiral Thane watched in growing rage as his weapons became useless against the primitive ship. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. His science officer, a nervous creature with 6 eyes, studied the readings. "Sir, they're using principles we've never seen before. Their defenses shouldn't work according to our understanding of physics." "They're not using advanced physics," Dr. Kale said quietly from her position on the human ship. She was beginning to understand what she was seeing. "They're using desperation." Captain Vex, who had been watching the battle in stunned silence, suddenly made a decision that would change galactic history forever. "All crew, battle stations," he commanded aboard the Harmony's Edge. "Target the Union fleet." "Sir?" His tactical officer gasped. "You want us to fire on our own people? Those humans saved my science officer's life by sharing their medical knowledge," Vex replied, referring to when Ben had helped treat a crew member's injury earlier. "And they're fighting for their lives against someone who wants to commit genocide. That's not the Union I swore to serve." The Harmony's Edge opened fire on Admiral Thane's fleet, its weapons striking the flagship's shields. The attack wasn't enough to cause serious damage, but it forced Thane to split his attention between 2 targets. "Traitor!" Thane screamed over the communication channel. "I'll see you executed for this." "Maybe," Captain Vex replied calmly. "But first, you'll have to win this battle." The fight became a deadly dance in the void of space. The humans, despite being vastly outgunned, seemed to anticipate every move the Union fleet made. When the enemy ships tried to surround them, the humans used their ships' engines as weapons, creating plasma bursts that damaged anything that came too close. When the Union forces tried to board them, they found the docking ports had been turned into traps, explosive devices hidden in what looked like welcoming airlocks, corridors that had been deliberately weakened to collapse on intruders. "How do they know our tactics so well?" Admiral Thane demanded. The answer came from an unexpected source. Tom had not only infiltrated their communications, but had been studying their battle formations and strategies in real time. "Admiral," Tom's voice came over the Union fleet's communication system, You're fighting like someone who's never had to worry about losing. Every move you make follows the same patterns. It's like reading a book we've seen before. Impossible, Thane snarled. You're primitives. No. Captain Reed's voice joined the conversation. We're survivors. There's a difference. The battle reached its turning point when Admiral Thane, frustrated by his inability to destroy the human ship, made a fatal mistake. He ordered all his vessels to concentrate their fire on a single point, planning to punch through the human defenses with sheer, overwhelming force. It was exactly what Captain Reed had been waiting for. Now, she said quietly. Maya triggered the final component of their improvised defense system. The new dawn had been slowly venting atmosphere and fuel into space throughout the battle, creating an invisible cloud around the ships. When the Union fleet's concentrated energy beams hit this cloud, it ignited. The explosion was visible from several star systems away. 3 of Admiral Thane's ships were caught in the blast, their shields overloaded and their hulls cracked. The flagship itself was thrown tumbling through space, its engines dead and its weapons offline. But the humans weren't finished. Ben, the medic who had seemed so gentle, launched himself in an emergency pod toward the damaged flagship. Dr. Kale watched in horror as he flew straight into the heart of the enemy fleet. What is he doing? She gasped. His job, Captain Reed replied. Ben's pod attached itself to the flagship's hull near the medical bay. Instead of trying to fight his way to the bridge, he headed for the ship's wounded. Admiral Thane and his crew watched in confusion as the human began treating their injured, using medical techniques that were far more advanced than anything in galactic medicine. Why? Admiral Thane asked when Ben reached the bridge, where the Admiral himself was trapped, under a fallen beam. Why are you helping us? Ben looked up from where he was treating a wounded officer. Because you're hurt, he said simply. That's what medics do. The simple humanity of the answer broke something in Admiral Thane's understanding of the universe. These creatures, these weapons from a death world, were risking their lives to save their enemies. Over the next few hours, more humans crossed to the damaged Union ships, not as conquerors, but as rescuers. They shared their food, their medical supplies, and their knowledge freely with the people who had tried to kill them. Captain Vex found himself working alongside Maya to repair his ship's damaged engines. Why are you helping me? He asked. I betrayed my own fleet for you. Maya smiled as she handed him a tool. Captain, where we come from, loyalty to what's right is more important than loyalty to what's convenient. You stood up for us when it mattered. The aftermath of the battle was unlike anything in galactic military history. Instead of prisoners and conquered territories, there were new friendships and shared knowledge. The humans taught the aliens medical techniques that could save millions of lives. The aliens shared their star charts and navigation data with the humans. When the Galactic Union High Command arrived to investigate the incident, they found something that defied all their expectations. Admiral Thane, the Union's most feared military commander, was working alongside Captain Reed to draft a new treaty. This is impossible, the High Command representative said. These creatures are from a death world. They should be destroyed, not negotiated with. Admiral Thane looked up from the documents he was reviewing. His red eyes, once filled with hatred, now showed respect. I fought them, he said quietly. I tried to destroy them with everything I had. And when I was defeated and helpless, they saved my life. He stood up slowly, still recovering from his injuries. These humans are not weapons. They are what we could become if we stopped being afraid of everything that's different from us. Captain Reed stood beside him. We don't want to conquer anyone, she said. We just want a place to call home. In return, we're willing to share what we've learned about survival. The treaty that was signed that day became known as the Terra Accords. Humanity was granted full citizenship in the Galactic Union, along with a world of their own to colonize. In exchange, they agreed to share their medical knowledge, their survival techniques, and their unique perspective on problem solving. The new dawn was escorted to a beautiful world with blue oceans and green continents. As the humans prepared to build their new home, They were joined by volunteers from dozens of species who wanted to learn from them. Dr. Kale was among the first to request a permanent assignment to the human colony. "I want to study how you adapt so quickly," she told Captain Reed as they stood on the surface of humanity's new world. Reed smiled as she watched her people begin building their first settlement. Children were already playing in the alien dirt, and adults were examining the local plants to see which ones might be useful. "Dr. Kale," Reed said, "the secret isn't that we adapt quickly. The secret is that we never stop adapting. Every challenge is just another chance to become better than we were." Across the galaxy, the phrase "humanity fuck yeah" became more than just words. It became a symbol of hope, proof that no matter how dark things became, someone would always be willing to stand up and fight for what was right. And in the depths of space, other ships from other dying worlds began to follow the path the new dawn had blazed, knowing that in this galaxy, there was finally a place for those who refused to give up. The ghost ship from the deadliest world had become the flagship of a new age of cooperation and survival, and the humans, the last survivors of Earth, had found something more valuable than a new home. They had found a new family among the stars.